go.
Say something interesting, Ben.
What's the meaning?
Oh, not even of what? Just the meaning. Yeah, good question. That is actually a question that has come up in the book I'm reading at the moment, which is a kid's book called The Mouse and His Child. And yeah, it was getting super deep into existential philosophy and like the meaning of infinity, like when I was reading it this morning. It's really cool. It's like, on the surface, it's this story about two mechanical wind-up toy mice and their journey as they go from being in a store with other toys to them being sold, to them being thrown out, to being kind of broken apart and fixed by a tramp and then set off on an adventure. And yeah, it's been really rough. It's been a rough ride going out into the real world for these like two little toys. And it's been really violent as well, which has surprised me. Like, they've encountered murder and theft and war. But now they're more sort of deep into trying to figure out who they are and how they're going to get themselves out of this like chaos that they've fallen into. And yeah, it's really, really powerful actually. And they encounter all sorts of creatures on the way who either help or hinder them. Like a frog who tells their fortune and gives them a lot of like abstract, obscure messages, which are all sort of now coming out and unraveling. But they also meet this muskrat who's like a philosopher kind. Well, he's like he calls himself an applied thinker, and he has these equations, and his like best known, most famous equation is y times how equals what.
Wait, one sec. Y times how equals what?
Equals what? And I guess the idea is that, you know, those things can be moved around within that equation as well.
Yeah.
But they all sort of connect to one another.
Yeah.
And he uses that equation to help him solve out like a number of things, like he wants to beat these beavers who he lives near to, and they are super popular in the local community because they like fell trees and it's really cool, and he wants to be able to fell a tree. So he has to like come up with an idea of like what's going to help him fell this tree. He uses the equation to help him. But anyway, he comes to a sticky end.
The tree fall off.
Yeah. And they've just ended up at the bottom of this pond with this tortoise, or no, a snapping turtle, who is a philosopher and who is living in the depths, like in the depths of being. And he's only interested with questions of being. And he's asking the mouse and his child some really difficult questions, which they're trying to puzzle out. Yeah.
So is it like intellectual conversations where it gets heavy?
But they're kind of absurd as well.
Right.
So that a child kind of could read them and they just sound like nonsense in lots of ways, but they're not nonsense. With the snapping turtle in particular, it's almost like Beckett, like Samuel Beckett. Yeah.
It sounds kind of Lewis Carroll-y too.
Yeah, it is a bit. I think possibly Russell Hoban, who wrote it, might have been quite influenced by Samuel Beckett and like the theatre of the absurd, because this turtle has written a play which is about two things that come out of dustbins.
Oh, right.
Well, not out of dustbins. They come out of... They're like talking heads almost. Yeah, so it's very like Samuel Beckett.
What's that one? Endgame?
Yeah.
Heads in buckets.
Yeah. Is it Endgame?
I'm not sure.
I think that's...
I don't know.
No, I can't remember.
It's the one where she's stuck in the sand.
Happy Days?
I think that's that one.
Is the head in the sand?
Yeah. And then
Yeah,
there's one
no, I
where
think it is
there's-
Endgame, isn't it? Endgame has a blind guy in a chair, and his servant, and 2 people in dustbins.
Yeah. That shit's heavy, I find.
Yeah, and that's why it's so nice in a kid's book, because it's not as heavy,
Yeah.
but it's still a bit kind of like perplexing, but it's cool because the mouse and his child just take it all very practically.
Yeah.
And start thinking about infinity and it's so cool, the image or the idea of infinity is put forward in the book through this can of dog food, and this appears all the way through the book, this can of dog food that has a label on it of a dog carrying a can of the same dog food, which has got a picture of the dog carrying a can of the same dog food, so it's like this never ending.
Yeah.
And the mouse child has just started looking at it and contemplating infinity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing really what children's authors, tackle in the books, and maybe it is that children's stories are easier to do it in somehow because it's not humans, it's animals or toys. And I don't know, maybe that's easier for us to understand it or approach it when we're not actually it's harder for us to think of it as us.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I wonder if we don't like coming at it in a sort of Mr. Serious voice. Because if you say kid's book, you always say it's just a kid's book.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the sort of undertone. And I think we're kind of let off the hook in a way. But I think we like that because it's like, oh, I can contemplate heavy stuff, but...
Yeah, I don't have to read Dostoevsky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think it's the same with science fiction as well?
Yeah, probably. I think sci-fi has definitely been an opportunity for people to play with ideas that they...
Yeah.
Or at least read people playing with ideas that they wouldn't otherwise contemplate, I think. Because so much of it is just like... Well, there's no such thing as aliens and alternative galaxies. It's all about us. But I don't know. Maybe it's like uninteresting to look.
Yeah, and I wonder if people almost need to be led into a feeling of escapism in order to then come back and see real problems in the real world. And maybe some people don't even join the dots, I don't know. But maybe some people just read science fiction and are like, great story, but don't see it as...
Oh, yeah. Well, like a kid, right? You enjoy the story so much. I'm not saying that you're a child if you enjoy sci-fi. But it doesn't matter what level you interpret the story at.
Yeah.
If it's a good story, it'll take you along for the ride. And really good stories you can come back to over and over from any level.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
Not only take you along they take you along for the ride, but like it's a specific ride that you have to go on. It's one that takes you to higher places and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wish that I'd read The Mouse and His Child when I was a kid, just to see how different it was reading it now at 30. Because I feel like I'll read it again, in the future.
Yeah. I've never read it. I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
It's one of those... It's funny how kids' books, you're like, all the kids' books I read as a kid, every kid read.
They're the
only
kids' books.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't think, though, that Russell Hoban is particularly well known.
No.
I didn't know about him until I started working in the place I work now and had this book recommended to me.
Yeah.
But he's written quite a lot.
Is he?
Yeah, and he wrote one relatively recently. He died 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, he died very recently, but he had a book, either that he'd just written or it was published after a while, came out sort of just before or just after he died, which I haven't got. But yeah, I feel like I will read more now. But it's been interesting rereading Harry Potter as well, because we're reading that together at the moment, and that's making me see how when I read it as a kid, I was just along for the ride, and I was just completely absorbed in that world and wanted to be the kids because they were like the same age as me.
Yeah.
But now, like, coming at it as an adult, I don't know, I don't feel as absorbed by it and the world, but I almost feel like I feel more sympathy with the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. That's the same for me.
Yeah.
I find two things. I find I'm very appreciative of her storytelling.
Yeah.
There's moments where I'm like, nice move, almost. That's a brilliant move, beautiful move. Also because I know what's coming.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I see you're setting something up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so much more sympathy for the characters, definitely. I wonder why. And that's happened to me recently, I feel like. But in everything I read now, I feel like less of a want to be the person in it, and more of a sympathy to how they're feeling, I guess.
Maybe it has something to do with, like, when you read things as a younger person, and especially, like, as a child, your identity is still so unformed.
Yeah.
You still have there's so much potential of what you could be.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we're, like, fixed in our roles now, but we are more.
Well, our brains have stopped developing.
Yeah,
our bodies have stopped growing.
And we do, in a sense, know who we are more in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I'm not, I was going to say, going to be a wizard.
You still could be.
Yeah, but it's a funny, like, it's almost like that time of my life has passed, where I am learning who exactly...
Yeah.
I've come through school, gone to university, and now, like, in the world of work, so I don't want to go to a wizarding school. But I know more, I guess, about what it is like to be confused and go through trials and that kind of thing. And I don't know, I've been really, like, touched by Harry's lack of family as well, and his, like, struggle to try and find family. And I think that's why the storyline of Sirius is such a great one. Because it's so tragic, but there's so much hope there, and you want Harry to have a family so much. And in a way, when you're a child, I feel like some of the experience of being a child is trying to escape your parents and trying to escape your family. And I don't feel that really anymore. So strongly. And so it's sadder, I think, to see Harry.
Yeah, you just, like, accept it as a kid. Like, almost, I wonder if it's like when you see someone in a wheelchair as a kid, you're like, why are you sitting in a chair with wheels?
Yeah.
You just accept the world, and you ask questions that adults find embarrassing, and it's like, oh, don't mention the fact that...
Yeah.
And you just accept the fact that the character, like in James and the Giant Peach, I remember, his parents are killed by a rhino.
Yeah.
And as a kid, it's like, okay. And now I'm like, holy fuck, his parents got killed by a rhino.
Yeah.
That would be so traumatic.
Yeah.
That would, like, fuck him up for life. That's brutal death.
And in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, when they're so poor, they all have to live in one bed.
Yeah.
They all have to sleep in the same bed with the grandparents and eat cabbage soup. And it's so funny when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that kids should be feeling terrible about the plight of these characters, but yeah, it is.
You just accept it as like, okay.
Yeah, you do sort of just see suffering and difference very innocently in some ways when you're a child. Although I was just thinking as you were saying that about seeing someone in a wheelchair or whatever when you're a child, I remember quite vividly, I think, the first time where I felt troubled and sad by seeing somebody disabled.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember, and it was a man, and I say man, I don't know how old he was, but full grown, and he had learning difficulties of some kind, and he was with his mother, I think, who was taking care of him. We were in Sainsbury's. I'd gone like shopping with my mum, and I just remember this couple, and my mum had gone off somewhere, so I was kind of on my own, and they were standing by some vegetables, and I think that the boy, well, the man was crying because he didn't want his mum to buy the peas. And he was like distraught that she was buying them, and she was trying to like bargain and like, negotiate with him and tell him that they needed them, and he was like in pain that she was doing it. And I'd never seen anything like that, I don't think. I think maybe I'd seen physically disabled people, but I don't know if I'd seen that sort of, disability in that kind of way. And I couldn't get it out of my head for definitely that whole day, but I imagine like weeks afterwards as well. I remember when I went to bed, I was crying and really upset, and I couldn't tell my mum what it was about, and she sent my grandma to come and talk to me, and I was talking to my grandma about it, and I can't even remember what she said, but she was trying to comfort me and explain that it was okay. And I just kept being like, he didn't want them. But that's a really vivid memory.
Yeah, and the fact that you remember it shows that it was probably one of those early learning moments where something...
Yeah, I think I was so confused by the fact that this man was older than me.
Yeah.
But was acting young, because I'd got to an age where I didn't throw tantrums anymore, and I didn't...
How old were you?
I don't know.
7
No, younger than that, I think, maybe. Yeah, maybe 5, 6.
Yeah. I mean, we've just realized by then that, like, what's going on in my head is similarly going on in your head, but it's your version, and, theory of mind, you get that about 4.
Yeah.
So for a year or two after having to deal with that mind-blowing fact, you have to start dealing with the fact that, like, and they don't all run like yours.
Yeah.
And sometimes they run extremely differently. I'd be so interested to go back into your mind as a kid and be like, what are you thinking right now?
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, when you were talking about the image of infinity being a dog label, dog food label, that made me think about, and I hadn't equated the memory with being face to face with infinity, but I guess it was. When I was like, I must have been 5, because we moved house when I was 5, and in the downstairs bathroom, it had one of those like bathroom mirrors. It was a cabinet behind it.
Oh yeah.
And you could open the two, like a triptych mirror. You could open the 2 wing sides and face them two.
The insides of the doors were facing one another?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they both have mirrors on them?
Yeah. So it was like, you could almost have a triangle of mirrors, and I could stick my head in there. And it was like a funhouse mirror.
Oh, right.
And you know how there's like corridors of mirrors?
Yeah.
You ever done it?
Yeah. Again, when I was young, when I was a kid, I used to.
And you like, if you're not looking at them dead on, they curve.
Oh,
The
okay.
corridor curves around at the end and it cuts off, but it looks like you would be able to look around.
Yeah, look around the corner.
And then you look around the corner and you're staring at yourself. Because if you're perfectly lined up, you're looking at it.
Yeah.
And that just absolutely blew my mind. I must have spent hours and hours and hours just sticking my head in this mirror tunnel and like contemplating the idea of infinity, though I didn't know it was that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But like seeing yourself in there too, and yourself reflected 100 times or however many times, and being like, well, which one is actually me?
Yeah. And the thing that they're trying to do in the book with this dog is trying to work out which is the last visible dog.
Nice.
And that's like this thing, the last visible dog.
Yeah.
And it's like a clue that they have to work out or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, trying to work out which is the real you, but also trying to work out which is the furthest away.
Yeah.
Like, can you pinpoint the furthest away one?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, as an adult, that's still more easily comprehensible than numbers or equations telling me what infinity is, or
same.
even like really heavy duty science terminology or philosophy terminology. I can understand it better now than I could as a 5-year-old, but I still get the image in my head a lot better with the idea of a dog on a label or a kid's face in a mirror. So yeah, I don't know. We call them kid stories, and then it's like, therefore I shouldn't be reading them because I'm not a kid. But to me, they're still the most helpful way of articulating some of these ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and mirrors are a particularly interesting one, I think. I don't know, I've just started thinking that now. But, because there's the thing about seeing infinity in the mirror. There's the thing about in The Mouse and His Child when they locate the last visible dog. They then try to find out what's beyond it and they rip off the label. And there's a tin can and they see themselves.
Oh.
And there's, in Harry Potter, there's the mirror of...
Erised.
Yeah, that shows you whatever you want.
Yeah.
And in the end of the first book, Harry sees himself giving himself what he needs, doesn't he? He sees himself with...
It's like it's been on him the whole time.
With the stone?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Because he just puts his hand in his pocket,
Yeah.
takes it out and puts it back in his pocket, and then it's in his pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like confronting the last, almost like the last final truth is you.
Yeah.
And that you have to be your own savior, almost.
It's like the hero's journey. They go on the quest and they're given all these things by like the wise man or the grandmother and things like that, and the sword and the shield and the elixir or dragon or something like that, and then by the end they've lost it all.
Oh, okay.
And they have to then, well, it's like at the end of Moana, she's at the top of the mountain facing that volcano, and she has to step out to walk to her death, because she's shed everything else. She's lost her buddy and her companion and sidekick, and it's like so well shown in looking into a mirror. But yeah, it's like you get given this stuff in order to get you down the road, but then by the end you need to...
And is it something about like you have to sacrifice the self in order to attain and realize the next possible self?
Yeah, to level up, I think.
Yeah.
It's like you have to kill everything, including the self. So she and Harry at the end of Harry Potter voluntarily kills himself.
Yeah.
And Jesus on the cross,
Yeah.
It's that. I'll kill everything, including myself. And that is how you're able to come back immortal to the village or whatever. And you bring back the prize, the wisdom. And you don't actually bring back anything. You bring back what was in you the whole time. And you've only just discovered by going deep within and killing off all the dead wood of yourself. And then you realize that, yeah, it was there the whole time. I mean, it's awesome. And that's what you're doing when you're a kid looking in the mirror. And that's what every myth is about, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I sometimes worry if the sort of branch on the fiction tree of literary fiction is a dead end.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't had this exact thought, but I've been dwelling on this ever since I did my degree, because I was introduced to, it was all about literary fiction.
Right.
Apart from one class I took on pulp. And it was almost like shitting on pulp. But I really enjoyed reading them. Zane Grey, I think, and Little Women was on that course.
Was it?
Yeah.
As
pulp.
As pulp?
Yeah. But it was stupid because every class it was like, well, what is pulp?
Oh, right, okay.
It was stupid. But I got introduced to a bunch of westerns. Maybe even Stephen... No, I don't think it was Stephen King. Anyway. Like... And I think Don DeLillo, the last thing I read that was really literary was Don DeLillo's short stories. And I enjoyed them. But I re-realized why I feel differently with literary fiction to when I'm reading, like, just what we call genre fiction or pulp or a kid's book. And it's like James Joyce, I think, was a big component in initializing this change in T.S. Eliot and Virginia Woolf, where they got so excited about the use of language. And who was his name? The guy walking down the road smelling the almonds.
Oh, Proust?
Yeah, he, I think, was involved in... He was really early kicking it off. Where it's like, the point of literature is to not tell a story, but to evoke a realistic world, a realistic mirror image, maybe, or manifestation of the world in a reader's head with words. And it got all artsy-fartsy with, like, it's almost like a word sculpture. And not 1984. Ulysses.
Yeah, Mrs. Dalloway is
Mrs.
very
Dalloway.
like that.
It's not they're telling a story of sorts, and Ulysses is nodding all the time to one of the most epic stories of all time, which is a classic story, but it's making these nods to it. But they don't do anything. They just take the bare bones of day-to-day life in a modern city as enough. It's enough to just look at people and how they live in the modern city. And then on top of that, we're gonna get all excited and experimental and often brilliant with the use of words.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any... Well, for me, I can't deny that T.S. Eliot's poetry is, like, probably the best poetry I've ever read.
Yeah.
So, some of the best poetry I've ever read.
And maybe I should leave Eliot out, because poetry is almost like a word sculpture or word painting. I feel like. So forget Eliot. Let's talk about just novels and prose and storytelling, because that's what I associate with novels and prose. Because I think we need a different word for literary fiction books, almost, because it's like, now we compare all the stories, all the books to these. I feel like we're still living under this umbrella of it should be literary, and if it's not good. It's trash. It's airport fiction. It's just like, it's not Pulitzer Prize winning. And I feel like until we get get over the fact that, yeah, words can do really interesting things when we try to convey stream of consciousness. That's different to talking about the meaning of life and teaching one another the great truths of, like, our ancestors. But reinvigorating them with, like, telling a story about video games, or because you can't just read the past in order to understand the present. I think you need to sort of try to use the lessons of the past but translate them into modern language almost. I think that's the job of contemporary writers and artists. And I'm worried also that it's pushing a lot of people away from reading, because literary fiction is great when you're so jazzed about how we use language. And, oh, do you see how we use that verb there as a noun? It's like, or not even that, maybe not even that technical, but like English lit grads and artsy-fartsy people can get stoked on Miss Dalloway. Even if they're bored to tears, they're excited by some of it. And purely through the experimentalism of it, maybe. And it pays off a lot of the time. But for a lot of people who don't get excited over the use of words, I feel like it's pushing them away.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because you've made me think about a few things when you were talking. Like, one of them is, well, the stuff that came before the literary fiction efforts. So, like, the classics, like George Eliot and Dickens, and even Shakespeare, and, you know. And they were telling stories, and really good stories with incredibly real characters, and also with the implication that, yeah, it's not all about it's not about experimenting with language necessarily. So some parts of the story are a bit boring because it's like trying to convey a whole story of someone's growth and development through the world and through life, but with moments of, like, just jaw-dropping realism of, like, yes, that is how it feels when you screw up. I know that feeling. Or that's what it feels like when you realise something that you hadn't realised before. And I think those things are so useful. And they're so useful because they give you such, I guess, real examples of human beings falling and stumbling and trying to do their best in the world. And that's really helpful. And then, like, you were talking about bringing it into modern as well. And, like, you don't just learn about the present through reading the literature of the past. And I know that I don't really read I read way more literature from the past than I read from my own time. And that's probably true of a lot of people who love literature and love reading. But I would like to. I think it's good to read people who are writing now, because, you know, we do need to, we can't, which I did when I was studying at university, and when I was younger, just wanted to live in the past. Like, why do I have to live now? I want to live then, in the world of these books. But that's, I guess, an entry route, but that isn't the route you should stay on with books and literature, because you've got to live now. You've got to live in the world that you're in. And they can help, of course, with it. But I would like to balance it out more with people who are writing right now.
Well, yeah, I don't know, actually. I don't know if there's a should there or a could. You could.
Yeah.
And I think what I was saying is less to do with who you should read, but people who are writing, I guess.
Okay.
Their job is to not just tell a story like Dickens told it,
Yeah.
but tell the same story Dickens was telling, but for today's audience.
Yeah.
But then I wonder if, no matter what you're writing, because at the moment there's going to be people who are writing that write the best stuff of our time and are read in 100 years. They're like, there has to be, right? Because that happens every generation.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we just won't know who they are because we're going to die. And people are still going to be sorting through all the words that were written during our time. So the appreciative audience is a way to like brush away the fact that nobody likes your work. The people who figure out if writing is really good and tell everybody else they should read it and sort of dictate, this is the writing from that time that's the best. Like Dickens, we know Dickens and Wilkie Collins and the 4 or 5 names we have from that time. And there must have been loads of people writing.
Yeah.
We just know that they're who you go to if you want to read from that time because they did the best job at translating the story into their time. They're the best writing of their time. Arguably, but consensually. So we won't know who's writing the best about our time. We can't, because we don't know what the hell's going on in our time, and we don't know everything that's being written. So you need like hindsight to be like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure I know what was going on in the 1880s. Is that when Dickens was writing, or 1840s or something? 1820s. We pretty much know through history and other books and art and all these things that we put together in order to judge a time.
Yeah.
And then we read him and go, yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, and I'm not trying to just be like, oh, devil's advocate kind of thing, but Dickens was very well known in his own time. As was Hemingway.
But maybe
right?
that's a good marker of.
Yeah.
So sometimes we get it right, but like Melville, who wrote Moby Dick. I know maybe these are the exceptions that everybody knows, but like J.K. Rowling will probably be recognized.
Yeah.
And Stephen King. I think Stephen King, people are going to be like, he was regarded as Pulp Fiction in his day, but now we read him in universities.
Yeah.
Or like, whatever. Because out of his goddamn 150,000 books he's written, he's going to have one that's amazing. But also, it is a good marker, I think, actually. It's just like, it's hard as a reader who also has like, I know a lot about books because I've studied them for a long time.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the ones that like 8 people enjoyed. But they're in the same bag of books for me as the ones that 1 million people have enjoyed.
Yeah. No, I totally get your point about it not maybe being us who knows and decides what's the greatest stuff of our time.
Because someone might be writing in a room with bolts on the door and just like putting their shit in trunks. But actually it's goddamn amazing. Though I'm not sure if that's just this sort of Hollywood idea of like, you could be the noble savage or something. I don't know if it's the noble savage. I don't know why that popped in my head. You could be the one who knew the secret.
Yeah.
And everybody else was in the dark.
Yeah.
Maybe that just taps into that sort of desire. But maybe we are better judges than I'm giving us credit for. Like, we do pick out the best ones because we want more of their shit. It's like, yeah, I like what you're doing. Give me more of it. It's not like, I hope you deign to give me more. like us giving J.K. Rowling so much money is like, we want a lot more now.
Yeah.
And of course, she had so much money that she had the time and energy, and like she was onto something, and she must have known it when the checks started rolling in. But it's not like she's in control.
No. Yeah, and it's an interesting one, isn't it? And it's difficult because, like, well, J.K. Rowling wrote 8 books, which, in a way, changed the world.
Totally.
But it's still just 8 books.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's an incredible achievement. But now what? You know, she's written adult books, and they've got some, you know, quite a few people like them. But now she writes movie scripts about that world, and I don't know.
I wonder if she's bored.
Yeah, don't know, possibly, but she's moved into a different realm now, right, with movies and screenwriting.
Yeah.
Whereas, for example, Emily Dickinson never had anyone really read her work ever, and she wrote like thousands and thousands of poems, all of which we now read and consider to be like seminal and you know, they are amazing. And all of that came out of like, I don't even know if she had any glimmer of hope or knowledge that her stuff would be read. And I don't think she ever received money for them. I could totally be lying here, I don't know. But I know that she lived a lot of her life as like a recluse.
Yeah. And time will tell with Harry Potter. Like, it seems unshakable because it was such a phenomenon.
And I think it will carry on being read, and I think it will stand the test of time. But, you know, it started out of complete uncertainty as well, but now she's got so much certainty that anything she writes will be read.
Yeah.
And will probably be made into a film. That I don't know how that can not change the quality or change the. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting dilemma, like the celebrity status that comes now with like success in every sphere, it seems.
Yeah. Though Dickens too, right? I guess that's industrial though. Like he lives. His time is very similar to ours in a lot of ways, even though it seems so different.
And I don't know what celebrity meant in those days compared to what it means now, because did it mean that like he was just a household name and everybody knew who Charles Dickens was? Like young and old? Or did it mean that, you know, those in the know loved him and those... I don't know. I mean, he certainly obviously didn't have his face up on screens and on the internet and whatever, but it's hard to know what the impact of celebrity is now compared to then. But I'm interested about poets as well, because it seems like we've decided who the best, most recent poets were, like Seamus Heaney and Ted Hughes. But they're both dead now.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know.
What's her name?
Carol Ann Duffy.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is a great poet.
You don't have to say it.
Yeah.
She's not. She had... I've only seen her read once.
Yeah.
And I've never gone and read through everything. I've maybe read like half a dozen by her. And
it's frustrating because it's like some of it is interesting, but I can't feel roused by it.
Yeah.
In the way that, you know, Ted Hughes and Seamus Heaney just... They do that thing that you can't put words to. And same with like Simon Armitage. Like, I think he's better. I prefer him to Carol Ann Duffy for sure. But still, I'm like, I know those guys have read and they're on courses and stuff now. But I'm like, who is the next? Like, who are the poets?
Yeah.
You know, like, who are gonna stand the test of time as well.
I wonder if poetry takes an extra generation. Yeah. So we only know, like Ted Hughes and
Seamus Heaney.
Seamus Heaney are the poets of our time.
Yeah.
And the people who are writing poetry now are going to be the poets of 3 generations hence. Yeah, I'm not sure. Because I don't know why, but I sort of get this staggered view of history in a way. Because, like, pop music is so uptight with the present. It's like Justin Bieber is the name of today. And he gets $1 million today.
Yeah, and singers are talking about clickbait and YouTube.
Yeah,
and
they're dealing with the very fringe, and I guess YouTube videos now, but that's even more intense. But like, they're dealing not the fringe. They're at the very. Imagine it's like a Target. They're at the center, which is today.
Yeah.
And then they're gone tomorrow. Like Justin Bieber is not even the name anymore. Fuck him, it's Drake or like Ariana Grande, and I don't even know the names anymore. I'm old.
No.
And then you go out one step, and it's like, and I don't know. I'm gonna get all these wrong, but like, it's TV shows then next, soaps and shit, and they're dealing with what was going on 6 months ago. And then movies. And then novels, and then fine artists, because they're trying to deal with the contemporary shit, but they're always a little bit behind, I feel like. And then singer-songwriters, or maybe they come a little bit earlier, I don't know. And then poets. Because, like, I feel like some things just move slower than the present. So the present they're dealing with is still moving at the same pace as ours, actually, but just further behind. And then this idea I've had, but I never articulated, religion comes like 1,000 years behind. So, and that makes me think that like all this discussion of like science is beaten religion and religion's dead and God is dead and all that shit. I wonder if in the present moment, popular music sort of thing has always been taking down the institution of religion. But as the present gets wiped into the past, we realize that actually it had nothing on religion, because religion just sweeps away all the... It just lasts. It's lasted beyond... I don't know any of the popular singers from ancient Rome. You know, and there must have been.
Yeah.
And it's gone on a tangent from like poetry, but I feel like poetry...
Well, that's, we know some of the poets of ancient Rome.
Yeah, I know. And it's like that shit lasts, but it takes... Because I guess the number of people listening to pop music compared to the number of people reading contemporary poets is like 1,000 to 1 more. So there's going to be a few people who read contemporary poets, and they say, oh, you should read this one to the next generation. And then they read the contemporaries and compare them to the past and the new, and they say, you should read this one. And then they get passed on, and then they get passed on, and then they get passed on until it's just the one. Where it's like, oh, you want to read 2020 poetry? Read this person. Because now we've got 8 generations of people telling us, 8 generations of like 6 people being like, yeah, they're the best one.
Yeah.
Whereas with pop music, you've got 4 days of being like, number one, he's at number one, he's at number one. So of course you listen to that.
Yeah. Where does science come on your target?
In some ways, it's like the person blasting down the, like, if it's like at the very front of the mine shaft, just carving forward.
Okay.
Unstoppably. And not that everybody's dealing with science, but like I'm not sure. That's a good question. I answered that quite quickly.
Yeah, because I mean, I would think that it can't be outside of that target realm that you talk
No.
about. If religion is included in it, and music is, and philosophy is, then science comes somewhere.
I think it probably would be at the very forefront, actually. It's like the...
It's today,
the
as today is pop music. Just because people are doing it today. I mean, people are writing poetry today.
But it's different to writing a pop song.
Yeah?
Because we aren't doing science, I feel like. Science is being discovered by us every day through experimentation and whatever scientists do. But like, they're uncovering scientific truths every day that then cast the past in a new light, but also change the future. So I don't know if they're dealing... It's like, I don't know. Because someone could come out with could publish a paper today that rewrites the basic rules of physics. So that is dealing with the rules of physics of today, in a way.
How do you mean?
I don't know, I'm just trying to compare it to writing a pop song about clickbait.
Yeah. And also, would someone discover something that completely reordered the basic rules of physics?
Well, I'm pretty sure the Higgs boson... What is it? The Large Hadron Collider?
Yeah, wasn't that something that discovered something that we...
thought was there.
Yeah, that we had no idea was there, and changed the way we thought about certain elements of...
Yeah, I'm getting into territory I know nothing
I know,
about.
me too.
But like,
we need to get a physicist on this show.
Yeah, I know. One day... Oh, fuck it, yeah, I shouldn't even try. Science does fit into that target somewhere. And for some reason, my gut instinct is to say it's the very tip of the spear.
Okay.
Of the target. But it's not the same as pop music, which is sort of like, they're not exactly the same then.
Yeah. So how does this make you feel as a writer and a reader? Because you sort of placed yourself there as somewhere where you can't be at the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
You're always going to be somewhere behind.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you are behind, or I don't know what's...
Yeah. Yeah, because I listen to like Kanye West and I'm like, man, I'll never be standing on a Jumbotron singing to 50,000 people. And I'm at peace with that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not in it for fame, though fame is always attractive. It would be nice to have 50,000 people screaming your name. Like, that's not why I'm doing it, but it's also true that it would be nice. It would be, like, the idea of it is nice. I'm sure I'd freak the fuck out. But I've come to terms with the fact that I don't write music. And I feel like music is so immediate. Right? You go to a gig and you have your mind blown and you come back with like a reinvigorated sense of the world, and you've shared this experience with however many other people in the crowd, and it's a show with light, smoke, music, it's dark. It's almost like a religious experience where you're like tapping out with your brain and being like dancing, and I'm so in the moment. And that, I love that idea. It's such a beautiful idea of what humans do together, because it seems so tribal, but we do it better than we've ever done it in some ways every goddamn day. Like, people go to festivals, and it's such a strong idea that we've come up with that it like grips us and is you couldn't just get rid of music. People would be tapping their feet and being like making music with their bodies.
So it's interesting that thing that you said was at the furthest end of everything, religion. In some ways, it is being brought into the...
Well, maybe it's a pseudo-religious.
Yeah. Yeah, and we get in here to the complexity with, labeling.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, because there's like religion and religious experience. Because I think I've had religious experiences with books where they've lifted me out of it, and I've read something and the stars have aligned, and I've felt the hand of God and all this shit. And that's a pseudo-religious experience. Or maybe it's just a religious experience. Or maybe it's a transcendent experience. And that's what all art and maybe science for scientists can do for people, I think. And that's what everybody's aiming at while they're trying to struggle to translate the world, I think, into modern language.
Mm.
And I'm okay with the fact that words do it for me, but they do it for fewer people than music do it for, or two. And watching a screen, it seems like it's more easy to convey, or it just garners a bigger audience. And I think audiences tell the truth, more people have emotional experiences with music than they do with books. But it's so strong. That's the strongest realm for me, and that's why I write, because I know that it happened for me, and I'm pretty sure it happens for other people. So I'm gonna pursue the heights that words can climb to. Because it's not exclusive, like we said before, we're all different, right? And I love going to a gig, but I don't love it enough to like go to many.
Or to pick up an instrument.
Yeah. Whereas I felt compelled to pick up a pen. But first of all, probably to understand the world, not to convey the sense of experience that I felt and I wanted to. Or maybe it was through an unconscious feeling of like, I need to give this back. I don't know what the first. Are you compelled to figure the world out or to help someone else figure the world out? Maybe you are helping yourself, and that's someone else.
Yeah.
Yourself in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? I don't write a lot, but I have felt compelled to write for sure. And I think one of the reasons it hasn't stuck with me, or I don't do it almost religiously in a way that you do, is that I don't really know why I'm doing it. In some ways, other than sometimes it is just really good to be able to think aloud and have it written down on a page. But when I do that, when I write down thoughts, I quite often frame it in terms of a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Because that seems like the natural way to get uninhibited thought out.
Yeah.
To introduce another person into it. But it is yourself.
Yeah.
Or it is God, which is
like
almost
a part of yourself.
Yeah. It's a part of yourself. It's it's the part of yourself that isn't just concerned with your daily affairs and your daily sort of needs and things. It's the sort of more eternal part of yourself.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah. So your question was, what comes first? The need to make sense of the world yourself, or to help someone else make sense of the world? I mean, logic would tell me that it's you figuring out the world first.
Yeah.
And the person who you're trying to help figure out the world is you.
Yeah.
And then the more you become adept at it and the more familiar you are with it and the more you figure out, the more it becomes a kind of effort for others, maybe.
Yeah. I wonder if it's like another understanding, or like like when you're 4 you gain theory of mind, and when you're X you gain theory of mind but for other shit. Like instead of feeling like you want to be the main character, you feel sympathy for the main character. Because you gain this extra like awareness that like they are, well, I don't know, like you can learn more by sympathizing than by wishing you were.
And does that become true of yourself too? So rather than just being you and being absorbed in the experience of being you, you begin even to gain sympathy for yourself as a character, for your past self as well. Because, if you're thinking of yourself as a character of your own story, the hero of your own story, you do change your relationship to that character the more developed psychologically you become, or emotionally. Like, I don't know, at the age of 5 I could reflect on myself at the age of 4 and feel sympathy for my 4-year-old self. You know, I'm pretty sure that I couldn't.
Yeah, it seems like the first 25 years you're just like, you're at the pop music stage. You're just blasting through at the very edge. Or at the very center, I don't know. Just like learning how to fucking do.
Like when Joe Rogan on his special was saying, like, you know, teenagers are still learning how to use language. That Drake song is so fire.
And you're just practicing being a human.
Yes.
But then by the time you're 25, it's like, right, enough practice. I ain't getting any better. Or maybe no, maybe not. I'm getting any better. But it's like, practice is over. Now I just run this shit on autopilot. And I appreciate the nuance of it, or the subtleties now. Which I think is more sympathizing than just like pinned to the front of the runaway train.
And I'm not trying to bring this full circle just so that we can tie things in a pretty little bow. But that's the problem of the mouse and his child, where they're trying to learn how to be self-winding rather than having to rely on other people to wind their mechanical key so that they can make their way through the world. They have to rely on the efforts of other people to give them that impetus and that energy and that drive forward. They want to know how to drive themselves. And that's part of growing up, right? You know? We don't have to anymore rely on other people's input and depend on them and trust that other
Tell us
people
what to do. In any state or level of our lives.
And that's a big responsibility. It's hard to know how to trust yourself. Shall we end there?
Nice.